Emily yet? Okay, we got you, Janet. Yeah, we don't have Chris or Emily yet.
That's it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know whether we're gonna have Clay, Karin.
Karin will not be in the meeting.
You won't, okay?
Yeah, Clay may not be here either. He's on extended medical leave.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
He's taking care of his mother right now.
Okay, no problem at all. Well, let's go ahead and jump in. It's 11:46, and it looks like we've got a quorum, so I'm going to go ahead and call us to order. And I'm going to ask that we vote first on the agenda, and we have to do that as a roll call vote because of doing this on Zoom. So, David? David, do we have you?
He's muted.
David, are you muted?
He's muted.
Adam, can you open him?
I'll try.
Yeah, I was going to say, we've got David muted. We've got Clay seems to be in and muted. Laura seems to be in and muted.
I was unable to unmute David's iPad.
Okay.
I'm muted.
Okay. David, can you text us or anything right now? Let's see. Okay, we're going to skip David for a minute, see if he can figure out how to unmute his iPad. Emily, do we have Emily yet? We do not have Emily. Okay. Barbara, on the agenda, aye or nay?
Aye.
Okay. And Tanya is not there. Chris? Do we have Chris?
No.
No.
No, we don't have Chris. We may have a problem here. Daisy?
Aye.
Okay. And Janet? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And I'm voting aye. So that gives us 4. Unless we can unmute David, we don't have a quorum. We need 5 for a quorum here. So, Yes.
Can anybody call him on the phone?
Yeah, I'm gonna try to give him a call real quickly here.
I sent him a text, but
See if we can get a hold of him. Because John, I'm assuming that we can't go any further until we have 5 active participants.
yep.
Yep. Okay. I hope everyone's doing well this morning.
Oh, Christine just came on.
Okay, good. So we've got Chris. We're asking a vote on approving the agenda today from you.
I vote yes.
Yes. Okay. And for some reason, while David's on here, he's not answering his phone either. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on without David. We now have a quorum since Chris has joined us. So we've approved the agenda. Now we're going to move on to the consent agenda. And once again, I'll call the roll on that. David, can't hear me still, or can't answer me still. Emily? Didn't we have Emily a minute ago?
No.
We don't have. We still don't have Emily. Okay, Barbara.
Yes.
Okay, Tanya's not here. Chris.
Yes.
Daisy.
Aye.
And Janet.
Aye.
Okay, and I vote aye. Okay, so let's just move on to the public comment period. We're on Zoom here, and public is allowed in. I don't think anyone signed up, but do we have anyone who wants to, even though they didn't sign up by yesterday at 5?
No.
Add another I to that.
There's David. Do I have aye on both consent and consent agenda and the agenda? David?
Could you repeat?
Okay, an aye on both the consent agenda and the basic agenda.
Aye, aye.
Aye, aye. Okay, we got you. Okay, not hearing anyone on public comment. Let us jump into library friends. And it looks like we do have Clay here. So, and he just unmuted. He's ahead of all of us. So Clay, if you want to give us a quick, we're sorry to hear that you're having to be out on medical leave and taking care of your mom. We wish her the very best.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Ruth sent along a few notes here, which I'll read verbatim. She says they're in the process of sending their summer newsletter. That's a digital newsletter that's going out to all Friends members. And they're also in the process of mailing out membership renewal letters. She mentions the spring renewal letters were put on hold to see how things developed with the book sale. And they will be used for some additional fundraising. So they're going to do a different letter from what they normally do, given the circumstances of our closure and so forth. She says they're very happy that a couple of their volunteers have been able to come into the building and continue working special collections, as well as keeping the book sale area tidy and managing the collections there. She says, we will not take any new book sale donations for the time being, though we are having a bit of FOMO, fear of missing out, with all the clearing out people have been doing with their free time. We have started formulating a strategy for taking in donations in the future that will not burden RPL staff, perhaps on a strict schedule basis with volunteers or by appointment only. And that's it. That's all she had to say this time. FOMO,
Excellent.
I got to remember that. That stretched me a little bit there. But so they're concerned because, you know, evidently people have been doing a bit of cleaning while they've been in their homes more than what's normal, and want to donate books.
That may be a bright side in the long term, right?
Right.
Okay, that's excellent, Clay. Thank you.
That's all I have.
Any
Thank
questions?
you.
Any questions for Clay?
No.
No. Okay. Foundation. Karin is not with us. Scott, did you want to say anything about the foundation? Or Emily is not with us either, and she's our foundation rep. So, Scott, do you have anything?
We had our annual foundation met 2 weeks ago or a week ago by Zoom. Mainly just reviewed where we were at for the year, talked a little bit about fundraising and development for the rest of the year, how COVID is impacting all of this. And other than that, they didn't take any new action. They're just kind of watching things develop. They did offer to purchase PPE. One of the concerns that was raised was that when we went into phase 3, to be able to offer masks to patrons who'd be coming in. At the time, we didn't know how we could do that. They offered to fund purchase of PPE to distribute to the public. We've gone ahead and ordered that. And if the city can't pay us for those, we'll ask the foundation to support us. But for now, the city's able to fund that need.
Out of curiosity, what are we expecting cost to have PPE and available to the public as being?
So about 5,000 paper masks were about $1,800. Is that right, Cheryl?
1,300.
1,300 for about 5,000 masks.
Okay.
So each branch will have about 500 masks when we open going into phase 3.
Excellent. And that's July 1. Well, you'll come into that in your administrative report. So
right.
Excellent.
I have a report on that I'll share with you. Hopefully I can share my screen with you so we can kind of walk through it, and then you can get a better idea of what it's going to look like and how we're going to operate going through that.
Sounds good. Well, I'm going to suggest we just roll right on into your admin report, including your screen.
Okay. Let's see if Adam has been able. Oh, he did share my screen. All right. So let's see.
Is it being shared right now?
No, not yet.
I'm not getting it. So
I'll push into that. Let me kind of move through some of the other things first.
Please.
So I will talk about like the finance committee once we get there. When I share that with you, some of those will impact like our opening hours, and some decisions will have to get made there. So that may be something we have to discuss when we go to the finance committee part of it. So
sure.
Let me pull this up.
Yep.
Okay. That's not it. Let's see.
But it's a good document, Scott.
All right, let's see. Let me get to the top of it. Can you all see this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so it says pandemic response, Richmond Public Library. There's a table that kind of walks through the different phases. We've moved through safer at home, and then we're into we've moved through kind of phase 2, which is normal, 30% of normal operations. Then phase 3, I'm kind of dubbing 90% of normal operations. We'll be kind of following the rules for retail, where if you've seen those rules, they've opened up a lot of the, they've decreased a lot of the restrictions for the spaces. So in phase 3, we would open our libraries at probably about 50% of capacity. Can you see this table here? Okay.
Yeah.
Meeting rooms and branches would still be closed. Study and auditorium at the main would be open with restrictions. Mask would continue. Physical distancing would continue. Curbside assistance would end when we open our branches. Borrowing and interlibrary loan would resume on site. Computer usage would be decreased by 50%. So what we'd be doing is removing furniture between the computers. We'd also put limits on how much time people could spend in the library on the computers. We would resume fax service.
Okay. Scott,
Some of the things that we've done to prepare the spaces, we've added lots more physical signage. We've installed sneeze guards or spray guards and public service points. So every location at the circulation desk will have those. We've gotten some signage on maintaining 6 feet of distance, and we've actually taped the floor and done different kind of guidance on that. Again, mask continues.
Sure.
This is kind of rehash. We're going to recommend more hand washing, promote that. Really try and promote self-service. So self-checkout. We want to limit handling cash. So we'd like to push people to, if they have cash, use the coin ops that we have on the copiers and the printers. We have moved a lot of the furniture out of the space to create physical space if people are staying in the space. Kind of thought about our exits and how people move through the building. So we've kind of, you know, if you've been to the grocery store, they have different aisle directions. And again, I'm saying mask continue because that's really important.
Scott, before you move out of phase 3 and into phase 4, 2 quick questions that I had. You mentioned operating at 50% capacity.
Right.
Okay, so how often does Maine or which branches actually operate typically at above 50? I mean, when you say 50% capacity, that's what's allowed in the building based upon, I mean, are we looking at turning people away because of that? Or do we actually typically, you know, they're not so crowded that we're only looking at moderate dislocation to the public on this?
So I believe in phase 3, there are no restrictions for retail capacity. So you can have as many people in the space as you can. I think this is a little bit older, you know, so less than 100, but more than 50. So I think in many of our buildings, we're going to be fine. The thing we're going to have to pay attention to is if people are able to socially distance. So I've told branch managers and staff to keep an eye on things. You know, if people are not, you know, they're congregating, that's where we kind of need to kind of break things up, I guess, during this phase. But I don't want to get into a situation where we're having to kick people out or count people or do that sort of thing, because that just, I think it creates confusion and conflict that we don't need. And according to the Department of Health, since they've lifted those restrictions, I think we're going to be okay on that.
Okay, then the second one, I think that's excellent, Scott. That's what I was hoping we were going to hear. The second one, though, is the 50% capacity on the computers. which is a concern, at least to me, for some of the branches. Not everywhere. Hey, Emily, how you doing? I don't know if she can hear us or not. We just got a text from her, a message from her there. So my concern on that one, Scott, is I understand we need to space those computers far enough apart that we have the 6 feet and no issues of people, shoulder to shoulder at their computers. If we have branches, which is essential for some of these people who really rely on our computers, can we spread those computers out further into areas that are less utilized and maybe keep it 75% of the computers in use or anything like that if we have a need? And we may not, but we thought about that.
So one of the challenges with like spreading computers out more in the spaces, there's not data drops and power in some of those areas.
So you'd have to run,
we would have to run wires across the floor, do something like that.
We would.
So we don't want to do that. We would rather just use the computers we have. One of the things that we're going to do, instead of allow people to have 2 hours at a time on the computers, they'll have 1 hour at a time, and they'll have to renew, or they can update for up to 90 minutes. So if we can turn the computers over faster, that might meet the need of the patrons where we might not have enough machines.
Okay, and the branch managers will sort of monitor how that's going. And, in a worst case, if we have a bunch of kids at Broad Rock who are trying to do work, summer school work or online work, whatnot, or if we are still in this by the time we get into September, we can actually look at that other option, I assume, of worst case, we run some RJ45s and electric cords and conduit on the floor.
Well, the one thing that we can do is we have laptops and we have Chromebooks. So we can distribute Chromebooks and laptops to branches who have indicated that they have more need than computer capacity. So if that becomes a problem, we can send them some laptops, and then people can check those out.
Okay.
We have that now. I mean, they have that now for when their computers are over or have too much usage. So we feel pretty confident that by just spreading going to every other computer, that'll at least get us going through this phase. And if we have a greater need, then that's how we'll handle it.
Sounds good.
Scott, I have a question for you. Scott?
Yep.
I have a question for you. You talked about our capacity. Do you know specifically what the fire code capacity is for each of the branches?
I don't know specifically what they are, but under this phase, my understanding was that we don't have to restrict by capacity.
Oh, but your concern was being able people to move around and have social distancing, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
All right. I was just curious what the fire capacity is for each building. I mean, do the branch managers know that? I guess they do.
Yes.
We know what they are.
Probably labeled in each building.
It has to be, yeah. So we're doing a little
So
bit.
ultimately, that's our capacity.
Yeah. It sounds like you're going to do a little bit of the Lowe's versus Home Depot approach. Leave it up to the store manager to decide how many people in versus counting them in and out.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Scott, the other question was, since we're trying to help people with their lack of Wi-Fi, would it be feasible for us to put a sign in the parking lot that says Wi-Fi, free Wi-Fi zone per Richmond Public Library, since it's already out there, make people aware of it. So if you are shut down or on a day off, that they would be aware they could come to the library still without gaining access and use the Wi-Fi.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yep, little yard sign. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay, great.
Okay. Hey, Scott, before you jump into the next, while I've got Emily, in case there's anything, Emily, can we get a quick aye vote from you on the agenda and the consent agenda each? One on the agenda?
Aye for The agenda and I to the
For the
consent.
consent agenda, just saying that you approve the agenda and you agree with the consent, approving the consent agenda items, which are basically the minutes from the last two meetings, the regular and the special, and any approval of the pending gifts and statistical report that's attached.
Yes, I and I.
Perfect. Thanks, Emily. Okay, Scott, just trying to keep straight for John there, so.
Let's see here. I think that covers like a lot of the measures we're taking in terms of like going into phase 3 with like capacity restrictions, spreading out computers, masks, how we're going to require people to wear masks and then provide them masks if they've forgotten them or they don't have one. So we have purchased those paper masks. And then enforcing the social distancing as best we can. We are not going to contact trace or take temperatures of people entering the building or have that as a requirement. That's a requirement that a lot of that I've seen in the governor's guidelines and the state guidelines that health like a doctor's office or a medical facility has to provide. And there's lots of kind of different opinions on whether the temperature checks are appropriate. And then I'm not sure how we would do that or who would do that. And then if you're recording it, and so we're going to forego that. And it's also not required in this phase from what I've read.
And Scott, it's interesting, you mentioned the contact tracing. We're doing at church, for example, the sign in when you get there, so they know who's been there. I guess to some extent, if there's some outbreak, we have that based upon library usage, if they have used their card to access anything.
Right, so that's the thing I was working through, like for contact tracing, we don't want to do like a list becomes a record and people are reluctant to sign lists. It's a privacy issue. How long do we maintain the list? If it's not required, I don't like to create records like that if we don't have to.
Sure.
Further, if someone does come down with it, they're gonna ask them, where have you been? They're gonna say the library. What day? Depending on what day, I don't know that we'll be able to, that they'll remember or do things. I don't know how we would really keep all of that up. I mean, we could go back and do checkouts during certain time periods, but somebody would have to know the exact time, the exact day to kind of narrow it down. I don't know if that'll be possible. It could be, but we could do that with a court order. I mean, once we have our records exposed, I'm really reluctant to, go into those unless I have a court order.
Gotcha.
So we're not going to be contact tracing or temperature checking in phase 3. We're going to rely on those primary things that the CDC and the health department is saying: masks, washing your hands, socially distancing. And we're going to advise people that if you have a fever or sick, don't come in our building.
Right.
Let me arrow down here. I'm going to show you like a flyer that we would like to post.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay, so patron notification. So as we go into phase 3, curbside service would end and the hours would be. We're going to discuss that in a moment when we get to finance. So in the library, all patrons will be expected to wear masks. Patrons and staff expected to wear masks. We want people to be aware of those spacing distances. No one will be permitted who has COVID-19 symptoms.
Let's put an or between the fever or symptoms, fever or other symptoms, something like that, as opposed to just fever.
Okay.
Now, who enforces that?
So it'll have to be security or a branch manager or somebody who notices it.
Right.
So
does that open you up to any kind of liability? Somebody saying, who are you to diagnose me, or a hassle for the staff? I'm just curious.
yes, probably.
Okay.
So
Well,
then we
I
would
don't think we
probably,
have to worry about that, do we really?
do we have to worry about that?
No, I'm asking Laura, does she see any issue? I can't imagine that's really a big legal issue right now. Given,
Anybody can sue for anything, so we're in a whole new world.
Okay.
But I have, I mean, I'm sure that Scott and his staff, I mean, we're hoping that the patrons are going to be self-monitoring.
We do.
Right. So I just wanted to put that in there to say like, hey, don't come in if you've got these symptoms.
Sure.
Because somebody may feel like, I'm just going to pop in. I think we've kind of even had this happen already. So this also lets the patrons know that seating and tables are removed. It lets them know that our restrooms will be open and available. We had a lot of discussions about opening our restrooms, but we as a public space, we have to have public restrooms because people may need to go to the bathroom and they also need to wash their hands. So we're going to have our restrooms open. This kind of details that
On that, Scott, on that topic, the washing of the hands, or maybe Cheryl's better with this question, but are all of them now blow dry versus hands-on paper towels? Or do we still have branches with paper towels?
Yes, most have branches. Most of our branches is with paper towels.
So do you see
Only
any
the newer-
advantage?
Only the newer branches have blow dryers. Ginter Park, West End.
Okay.
And there's kind of a bit of a, there's,
What's that, Bill?
and there's also been a bit of a discussion and some studies done about how the air dryers are actually not the best possible situation right now.
Yeah. They may blow those particles all over everybody.
Yeah.
Correct.
right. And there's also been some new information. There's been a study that I think ALA put it forward that was discussing how long the virus survives on books and surfaces. And so far that's come back that it doesn't survive very long on those surfaces. So the 3 days that we're quarantining is more than enough. And so that's becoming more and more clear. So we'll continue to quarantine the books. And I do mention that in this notification that we'll have either posted in the libraries or for handout when patrons come in the library. Down here under returns, we have that, but I can get to that in a moment if there are no other questions on this part. No? Okay. So computers, this kind of goes through what we discussed on computers. We had a discussion about printing and faxing. So photocopy and print cash transactions will only be accepted through automated vending services. So at all of our locations, you can pay for a print or pay for a copy in cash by feeding money into a machine. I'd like to have us touch cash less. So that's a step that we're going to take. And this also lets them know that transactions over $5 is the limit. So you can't stuff a 20 in there. I'd like to suspend faxing charges temporarily because that's a transaction that happens at the desk. So during this phase 3, until we get back to normal, I'd like to suspend those charges for faxing. And also, that helps us. Go ahead.
I'm confused. Let me ask you to clarify. Faxing charges are suspended or faxing service is suspended?
Charging for faxes. We'll still accept the fax and fax it for them. We're just not going to charge them.
That's fine. Gotcha. It said that and then I thought you said differently. So that's why I'm clarifying.
Is that acceptable with everyone during this phase? Okay.
Sure.
That is, yes.
Good with me.
But Scott, I have a question up there earlier about your cleaning schedule. It says that both your housekeeping and your library staff will be responsible for that. Is there a schedule that they're following, like every 15 minutes, every 30 hours, the touch surfaces, or what are we doing in regards to that?
So I've seen the VDH guideline and the CDC guideline about like every 2 hours to make sure we're cleaning. Okay. So the high touch surfaces, if we can clean them every 2 hours, like a circulation desk that we're handing stuff across, or like a touch pad that we're touching, if we can clean those. Library staff will have to be responsible for cleaning the areas that they're responsible for. We'll have we've asked for more housekeeping in terms of like cleaning restrooms and cleaning other surfaces, and the city's going to do the best they can with that. We are not going to be able to maintain like a 2-hour cleaning facility with our housekeeping. Like our restrooms aren't going to be cleaned every hour. That's just not possible.
Right.
So, but we're going to do our best to clean our high touch surfaces as much as we can. So does that help? Does that sound reasonable?
That does,
Yes.
that sounds reasonable.
Okay. I didn't discuss notary in this document yet because notary is kind of up in the air. There are notary transactions. That's a service that we get requested all the time. A notary transaction, sometimes those are extended kind of close contacts.
Right.
Because the document may be longer for them to sign and you got to go over it with them. So we haven't decided exactly what we're going to do on notary yet. We could keep it suspended during this phase and open it up at a later phase.
You know, how many, Scott, I mean, do we do a lot of those? I mean, I would, you know, I would assume that the people who are going to the library for that, rather than going to their bank, are the ones who most need the library for that. A lot of us might go to the library, but we can go somewhere else to do it easily.
Yes.
You know, so I mean, is this going to create a real problem for people with lease issues and things like that? I mean, we don't.
Good question.
Yes, it could.
Okay. Let's think about that one. I'm not saying we need to change it, but you know, maybe mask and doing it in a more open area is a way to accommodate that. Not to, you know, obviously they've got to look at license, you know, some form of ID, and they've got to, you know, there's interaction, but.
So I'm not sure how we say notary service is dependent, you know, so do we say, okay, you've got one sheet to sign, I can notarize that, it's a quick and easy one, but if you have a lease or something that requires witnesses and more in depth, we could say no to that. Because here's the person that's going to be exposed to it is a notary. And I have notaries that are uncomfortable wanting to be in a prolonged discussion with somebody who needs something notarized.
Sure, and you also have a range of age and health issues on your potential notaries.
Yep.
Well, you could always say limited notary services, and if they're curious, they'll ask, right?
We could say that, yep.
And that would allow you to determine what the limits are.
Right, and that was a proposal, but I will say that I've had, when I put that out there, I haven't had a lot of takers.
Okay.
They would rather not just do it.
Sure.
But we could do limited service.
Or maybe we sort of track for the first few weeks that we're in this phase and see how many people we're turning down on, or how many people are saying, hey, I really need it. Can't you do something? In the meantime, you know, can we direct them somewhere else that they can get them done?
So that's a challenge in the city of Richmond. There are very few places that do notary. If you're working with like an attorney, they have notaries available. But if you are like, just need something notarized, it's difficult.
Well,
I don't know if you've ever tried to get anything
account.
notarized. It can be difficult if you don't have a notary at your convenience.
Yeah, I mean, should be pretty much every bank does it if you have an account with them, but a lot of our patrons are unbanked.
Right, and I think banks charge too.
Yeah.
Yeah, most don't charge for their customers, but at least, yeah. Okay.
The Richmond Credit Union, RBA Financial has a notary and they don't charge.
Okay. So maybe we can sort of look around and see if we could find a few in the, you know, find something in the proximity of each branch. I know it's a nuisance to look for this, but, you know, people may know some branch managers may be able to call the bank nearest them even and say, hey, for a few weeks, we can't do this. Are you doing it? Do you mind if we send some folks over? It would be nice to be able to say, walk across the street or down the block.
Yeah, I mean, in general, our staff does that all the time.
Okay.
So, yeah. So I don't know if we want to suspend it during this phase and consider it in the next phase with that kind of advice.
Anybody's thoughts? I'm okay with it.
It sounds fine to me.
Okay.
Okay. Let's move on to meeting rooms. We'll keep our meeting rooms closed during this phase because a lot of our meeting rooms are small, and our meeting rooms in the branches right now are being used to quarantine the books for 3 days. So they're now full of furniture that we've removed off the floor, and they're also quarantining books. So our branches wouldn't have their meeting rooms available until after we kind of open up more anyway. So at Maine, we can probably use the auditorium on a request kind of basis for events because we can distance. So we'll let people, we can handle those on a case by case during this phase.
If need be, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Donations, we're gonna continue not to accept donations.
Much as that at this time.
Yeah, not at this time. Yep. And I think Clay hit on that. The Friends would like to take it because everybody's cleaning out their basements and attics, but we just we want to try and avoid touching stuff coming from people's homes right now.
Sure, sure.
And we also just don't have the volunteers in the building to do it.
Yep.
We're going to accept returns inside and outside with that quarantine, and then extend the due dates we're doing longer checkouts. The other thing that we would like to do is automatic renewals. So we would start automatically renewing items. So if an item isn't on hold anymore, it would just auto renew up to 4 times.
I like that.
I do too.
That's good.
Yeah, it's a very convenient thing. It helps our patrons in terms of like remembering date dues. Since we're not charging fines, it just kind of helps them. If it is on hold, they'll get notified that it's on hold and that it can't be renewed and it needs to be returned.
Okay.
So the other thing we've done is we've had during this curbside, we've discovered that people want to check out more items. So we've doubled the amount of DVDs people can check out. So it's moved from 6 to 12. I don't know if we want to consider raising that more or keep it where it's at right now.
The downside is the popular titles, when you go from 6 to 12, become half as available to other people, right?
Well, the popular titles are always out regardless. So,
but with one person, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yep, that happens.
Well, Scott, are they just having them out a little bit longer because they're taking 12, but it's cutting the number of visits that they make and the amount of interaction at the staff bringing them out to them. And are we having a lot of problem with volume and quantity available inventory?
It's not being reported to me that we're having a problem. I have a couple branches that are, they have very high usage of DVDs and they always have a problem with not enough. They're always getting complaints about not enough DVDs, but those are usually coming from super users who they can check out. They might even have multiple cards. So they're checking out multiple DVDs, I don't know, many DVDs, and they're watching them in 3 days and returning them for more. So
okay.
There are people out there that just go home and watch DVDs straight. So,
okay.
Then the last part is I'm just kind of reviewing what's available with story time. So we're not going to do any programs right now. So that's probably the hardest part of this is that we open up. We'd like to help with all the isolation everybody's feeling, but we can't really come together and congregate because that's the risky thing. So we're still going to continue to promote all of our virtual stuff. The summer reading program will be mostly virtual, but as we open in phase 3, it'll still have to continue to be virtual because we can't have the programs that we usually have in the summer. So trying to promote that.
Okay.
I think that's kind of covered all of the measures that we have in place for what we would do going into phase 3. The one thing I would like you, sorry, go ahead.
We go into phase 3 on July 1, or is that up in the air?
You're going right where I wanted, where I was going to raise this issue, because the governor announced he would like to go into phase 1 on July 1st. We had targeted July 6th, but I'm going to leave that up to you. When would you like us to open up for phase 3?
So what kind of thoughts do people have?
Scott, do you feel ready?
Staff have been working for weeks on this, so we just have to figure out. I think our spaces are pretty well ready. I think we're eager to kind of get back to work and kind of get back to normal. We just have to figure out what our hours are going to be, and we'll have to have that discussion when we review what the review our financial plan for FY21.
I think Janet asked the right question. Are you ready? And does July 1 push at all?
I always want to open the libraries. I think staff are a little reluctant and anxious about it. And probably through the 6th would make them feel more, through the 6th would make them feel more comfortable.
Okay.
So we're talking about, also, we're talking about the Independence Day weekend, where you
Correct.
probably have less staff available, people have plans, and probably library usage drops, I would assume.
Yeah. So we would be open, if we opened on the 1st, it'd be 1st, 2nd, then we'd be closed 3rd, 4th, 5th.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't kill us to open on the 6th.
Well, the 6th makes
Sounds
sense
good.
given that.
I say the 6th.
I'm with Janet.
6 works good, I think.
And I think it also helps the staff to think that they were heard as well, that
Yeah.
their concern was taken into
Yeah.
consideration.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
I think
I
the
make
6th
sure that they know that. I'm good with it.
Okay, so
I'm
we'll,
good with it.
Does this require a vote?
Scott, do we need it?
I don't know that we need
I
it.
don't, yeah.
You're all aware of it. It's kind of dictated by the circumstances of this pandemic.
Yeah.
You know, the mayor could come back and say that we're not going to open. When the governor announced it just yesterday,
Yeah.
that was a direct question about what is Richmond going to do, and he said, well, I haven't heard from Richmond. You know, we went into phase 2 later than the mayor could request we delay going into phase 3 when the rest of the state goes in. But somebody also brought to my attention that the governor delayed phase 3 by a week. So
We did.
I don't know. I mean, this could get overturned if the mayor says he doesn't want to go in on the 1st, he wants to go in on the 6th.
Well, let's plan on the 6th regardless at this point, until we hear something different from the mayor.
Okay. So I've gone over all of kind of our policies and procedures for how we're going to open on phase 3. Were there any other questions or concerns or things that you all feel like we should address?
This sounds really like a good, thorough job. Thank you.
Well, if anything comes up, hopefully if we have to make a change, I'll let you know if something dramatic comes up, but this is how we'll proceed then.
Hey, Barbara and Daisy, I didn't hear any comment from y'all on the opening date on the 6th, but you okay with that too, I assume? Because I think I heard Chris, Emily, and David, but
This is Daisy. I'm fine with it.
good. Barbara, you okay too?
Yes.
Okay. Good. So we're all there. Okay, let's go ahead. Dave, Scott, go ahead.
Okay. So we've hit the major thing. Let me, if you recall, last month we discussed the special funds, and the council was going to have an ordinance to move funds to cover the deficit in library special funds. That was a resolution that got approved on the 4th of June. So they will be moving those funds from our personnel account into the general ledger to make up that difference in special funds. So that was all approved.
They're moving it from our personnel account?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Does that give us a shortfall in personnel?
No, we have excess funds in personnel of like 400,000. So that will cover the deficit in special funds, and yearly those funds don't stay with us. So if we don't use those funds by the end of the fiscal year, they go back to the city. So it's kind of like a bookkeeping.
So there's no
correction.
restrictions.
No.
Okay.
No.
We're good.
It'd be nice if we could keep those funds and carry them over from year to year, but that's not how the city does that with personnel funds. Operating funds.
For temporary labor too, but we can't, right?
Well, we have been able to move personnel funds down into the operating side of our books to cover temporary labor, because that's where temporary costs come from.
Sure.
So we've had to do that. We did that last year to correct the deficit. So this year, those savings from personnel will go to correct the deficit in special funds.
Okay.
So, any questions on that?
No.
No.
Okay. I have some information on the RFP for master plan, but I'm going to let Janet and I can talk about that under the facilities report. I mentioned a little bit about the summer reading program. That's all going to be electronic. Let me look through my notes here.
Sure.
I believe those are all of the big things that I had to discuss in my report.
Okay, that's excellent. I don't, jumping in here, I don't have a particular report. I mean, not a lot new since the meeting last week on the nominations and things. I don't know, Scott, I'm gonna let you and Daisy cover the finance. I know that's also, there's been no finance committee meeting, so it's sort of a.
Bill, this is,
Yeah, Daisy.
this is Dave. I'm gonna have to jump off this call in about 10 to 15 minutes, so
Sure.
I don't know if there's anything else you'll need to vote on. I think you have a quorum,
But
I'm good 10 to 15 minutes.
I appreciate that. We're good. And before you go then, Daisy, let me ask, did you have anything you wanted to bring up? We are still
No.
relying upon you and David until the new appointees are approved by the council. So we thank you for being here today and possibly even at the next meeting. But do you have anything else you wanted to bring up?
No, I don't have anything to add, and I'll wait to hear if needed in July. But I'm staying on for the next 10, 15 minutes. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Scott?
All right. Oh, one more thing I need to bring up. In your board report, there was a little bit of information on these tabletop chargers.
Yeah.
So that was something that David brought up at the last meeting, and I wanted to follow up with it. I don't know if we have this under old business, but we have purchased portable chargers that have an Android and a Mac charger thing. So if people need to charge their phone or their iPad or their Android device, they can check that out. And it's a rapid charger that they can take anywhere in the building. So this solves that need for people who need to charge their devices and they don't have a cord or don't have access to a power socket in our building. So they can sit kind of anywhere and charge their devices. And it also saves us a lot of time because we don't have to rewire things or put in USB sockets. So all locations will be getting those and probably have them in place when we reopen.
Will they have more than one or just one per branch?
One per branch. Each charger, I think, has 6 batteries in it, or 12 batteries.
Oh, they're battery powered. So they're charging their phone off of batteries. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then
I sent you
recharge
and
their
Gianna
battery.
an email with a device that I saw. They have it now, or Gianna look at it now, which is a hockey puck style. It stays on a table and you get 6 connections all the way around. So if I'm number 2 who wants to charge, I don't have to follow Scott around the library and stay near Scott. So something to look at in the future. If you when any sort of renovation, we could put power line to that table and have one table with the puck in the middle. And again, you may be able to see it now what I put on, but I like the idea. Obviously, I think it's very timely.
So yeah, thanks for that, David. I think this has worked well here at Maine, and it's a quick solution for all of our branches. So it's just like like you've got those external batteries that you use to charge your phone sometimes.
Yeah.
It's similar to one of those. It's also a rapid charger, so they're pretty good. You see them a lot in hotels. I think a lot of hotels provide them as like a concierge. I think it's called a concierge or something like that, but it works pretty well. So
Is it,
Sounds good.
is it
Just
theft
FYI,
proof?
this is the device.
no, okay. So it gets checked out to the person.
Oh,
The thing
okay.
is, if you check it out and you take it, you can't charge it because you don't have the dock for it to sit in.
Oh,
So if
okay.
they walk off with it, it's no good and it's still connected to them. So a lot of times if people walk off with it, they bring it back to us the next day.
Okay.
So
What was the
yeah, you
cost per
can't
unit?
charge it. Like you can't reverse charge it. It has to sit in that dock. So that's kind of makes it a little bit more theft proof.
Good.
But sometimes things just go missing, so.
Yeah.
What was the cost per unit on those?
I think it was like $350 a device
Yeah,
for the thing.
the device, the one that I saw on Amazon, just for future reference, is $20.
Okay.
So you could replace a lot of the other ones with a tabletop hockey puck like that. Everybody see that?
Hey,
Yeah.
David, I think the issue as I understood it, and we had this with the cell phone locker charging, working the same way a little bit, where you've got a wired connection that people have to stay with it. A lot of these people don't want to walk away from their, so that what they've gone to here is a non-wired device. It can be carried around, because apparently we had trouble with patrons not really liking to leave their phones on a table. And we sure right now don't want to encourage 6 people to cluster around the table, because that's
Not during COVID, no.
so I think we're good with that one for now. It's good to hear, Scott, that there's a solution for some of those folks for the moment.
Thanks for looking into that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Good suggestion. Okay.
You were going to touch on anything in finance?
Yeah, if I can, so since our last meeting, I apologize to the finance committee that I haven't been able to gather you all together and go through this. It would definitely save us time, but I can walk through it with you all right now, and we can discuss it you can discuss it as a board. The numbers are the numbers, and I can kind of walk through what we got this fiscal year and what the city has proposed to give us in the next fiscal year. And then we can discuss how we're going to handle it. Does that sound acceptable? Okay.
Yes.
Let me go ahead and share my screen again. I'm going to pull up an Excel spreadsheet that has our that comparison for you.
Okay.
Does everybody have it?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Oh.
Let me pull it up here. Does it look good? So you should see a screen that says.
You just bounced us to your phase 3 again.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. I don't know. It's a little. I'm still figuring some of this stuff out. Let's see.
It came up when you shared your screen, but then I think what happened is it dropped over into your Word doc instead of your spreadsheet. There you go.
Do you see it now?
Yep.
You got it. Yeah.
Okay. So it's hard for me to see what you're seeing. I just see what I'm seeing. So if something's confusing, give me a shout. So on this spreadsheet, you've got our budget and it's by account code. The top is what you're used to seeing. These are our general revenues from year to year. So you'll see lost and damaged books here. Does it highlight it when I click on it? Does that help?
Yes.
Okay, so 4502 is lost and damages, and you can kind of see this is FY20 to FY21. These are revenues that we bring in from just our day-to-day stuff. So you'll see lost and damaged books, sales from the copier center, line item 43501. That's how much we receive in state aid from the state. So we get about $189,000 a year in our state aid from libraries, from the state library. That goes directly into books. So these are all revenues that come to our bottom line of 221, and that goes to the city to help support the library.
Okay.
This next is our revenues from special funds, so gifts to the library. Those are funds that either the foundation that we get through sales or things like that, like copy printing, that sort of thing. That's where those funds go.
Okay. So Scott, real quickly, we all agreed that overdue book fines, it's somewhat immaterial. Obviously, we lose that 66, but that's the way it is.
Right. You see, I've zeroed that out for FY21.
Right. So let me ask you, Verizon E-rate is, not a lot of money, but it's $1,000 a month basically. We're doing less that we collect there?
So Verizon has changed the way that there's less that we can apply for.
Okay.
For Verizon, we used to be able to get telephone, but the federal government now excludes telephone because of voice over IP. So that lowers the amount that we get yearly.
Okay.
So that 75,000 comes back to the library and it goes into special funds and can be used for, we use it to usually replace technology and computers throughout the year.
Okay, let me jump down to public law library where projected 2020 was 250, projected 21, 318. Right. And yet we've had this problem. I mean, is that accurate? Or is that a?
So it's a best guess. In 2020, we really had no idea. I think 2021 is closer to what we've gotten this year. We're not going to know that final number until we get to the end of the fiscal year. Again, that's been the problem that the auditors pointed out. We are not informed of what the city receives. sometimes the funds get coded wrong.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
again, that's an
Okay.
estimate.
But
So-
it's not, we don't expect that's hundreds of thousands off. It's just
No.
in the ballpark.
No, yeah,
Okay.
that's right. Then that's the estimate of what the foundation gives us, and then this is what the Friends will usually give us for 2021. Now, the Friends are going to be challenged because they haven't been able to have their book sales like they've had in the past. So these are all like special funds revenue and total revenue that we bring in from year to year.
Okay.
So now we get down to the these are the dollars that the city provides us. So FY20 versus FY21. So you're going to notice that in FY20 under personnel, they gave us about $5,050,000.
Yeah.
This year they're giving us 4.5 million. So that is a pretty significant decrease in our personnel budget. Some of that funding is, if you recall, we did the VRIP last year, so that was going to produce some savings. So I think that's what they're figuring there. But this is below what we originally requested, and is not going to be enough to sustain us at the levels that we have right now.
Okay.
Books and materials, you'll see we went from 608 to 550, so that's about a 10% cut.
Yeah.
Contractual has stayed just about the same. Lion's share of that is security. You can see that we are spending about $300,000 a year on just security. That's pretty significant part of that line. And then all the other facilities maintenance stuff, advertising, that sort of thing. So bottom line is we had 6.3 million this year, and we've got about 5.7 next year. So where we're going to have to make that up is, you can see first off the bat, 10% cut to books. We're going to have a 10% cut to books and materials. So that will mean less titles, less electronics, less of those things. That's going to be direct. In terms of personnel, this is about the same figures we had in 2017 when it comes to FY17, FY18. So my recommendation is going to be return to hours that we had in FY17 and FY18 to absorb this cut.
Tell us what that means as far as basic operating on that. Who's taking a hit? What kind of?
So we would spread this out across the system, and the way I would absorb this hit is the way it kind of rolled out. We've added hours, so let's reduce those hours correspondingly. So my recommendation is we would eliminate Sundays and decrease hours in our branches. And I can show you kind of what that would look like. So let me show you that. Hold on a moment. Let me change my screen share. So this is what can you all see this screen? It shows like public service hours for 7/12 to 3/30 to 7 from July to December of 20. Do you see that screen?
Yep.
Okay. So these would be the hours that I would recommend for the next 6 months, and it would eliminate Sundays and decrease some of the weekly hours that we have. And I can walk through this and you can kind of see how that will work. So this is branch by branch. So Belmont is currently open 51 hours. They would go to 49 hours. So you can see the day of the week, the hours that they would be open, and then the total. This would be Broad Rock. We would eliminate the Sunday hours and go from 55 hours a week to 49 hours a week. East End would go from 51 hours a week to 49 hours a week. So we would open some of the we would close the extended evenings that they opened up during the past years. Ginter Park would lose their Sunday and their hours would change from 55 to 49. Hull Street would change a little bit. They had limited hours, so they would change from 49 to 48. Basically, they were open an extra evening, and that is what had been added during the last few years. North Avenue would stay about the same. They would go from 49 to 48. West End would change significantly because we added more hours there. So they would change from 55 to 50. They had been open till 8 o'clock Monday through Thursday. So they would start closing at 7. Then Westover Hills, they would have a minor change from 51 to 48. And then Maine would change. We would no longer be open on Sundays, and we would stay open until 7 Monday through Wednesday and close early on Thursday, Friday. So we would shift from 59 to 50 hours. So in total, that would be a reduction in hours from 481 to 440 hours, which would be about a 9% cut, which would correspond with the personnel cut that we took.
Scott, the Ginter Park, some of these branches were open till 8, correct? Some nights?
Right.
So it looks like where did you take the cut off the 8 o'clock time instead of on the other end, correct?
Yeah, why not start later?
So what it would do is it preserve our opening time at 10 o'clock. In the past, we used to open kind of all different hours across the system. This would allow us to consistently open at 10 a.m. across the system. And we would close those hours that are open later in the evening. What I'm hearing from branches and what we're seeing is that after that 7 to 8 o'clock hour is not a very busy hour. So that's why I thought we could shut that time down and stay open till 7 instead of close at 6 or stay open till 8. So it kind of splits the difference between closing earlier.
But just playing the devil's advocate here, if we opened up an hour later to reserve the later hours when you're going to get parents home from work, bringing kids up, people come in and after work versus it won't matter to a lot of people going from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Did you all consider that?
Yes, and when we looked at that, I was told by staff that the hours between 7 and 8 are not used.
That's surprising.
How about the hours between 5 and 6 and 6 and 7?
Those are times when we usually do see consistent people stopping on their way home from work or coming in later.
But I'm particularly wondering about that with Thursdays, Fridays. Saturday's less of an issue as it's, not a work day for as many folks. But should we be thinking about sort of keeping a uniform closing time as opposed to a uniform opening time?
Right.
Not at 8 o'clock, a 6 or 7 uniform closing maybe, or a 7 is what I'm sort of wondering about. What do other people think? I have no numbers to back this up. We don't know, how many people come in through the doors at each time of day. And, obviously we know that the 10 o'clock in the morning ones are probably going to be hitting our elderly population more. They may be more inclined to get up and go to the library, sort of one of their first things in the day. It may be getting in the way of some of the attendance by the young parents with preschool age and younger children. Yeah, opening later. So I don't know. I'm just throwing it out. I can see advantages to being open at 10. I can also see advantages to being open till 7. So.
Do we have data, Scott, that tells us how many people come at what periods of time, so your peaks and your valleys?
We can run I think there's an hourly circulation report, and we can check that.
Yeah, I thought they did that to determine these hours. So
it's worth remembering though that this year might be an outlier because people are still going to be working from home. We don't know that kids are returning to school. They might be doing school at home too. So I can see that would make me think that a more consistent start time would be helpful too.
Good point.
that are schooling at home.
So Scott, you've laid out a good plan. We don't have data that shows that we should change those hours. One reason, to change them longer in the day, later in the day, or earlier, or less, to start them early, to end them later, whichever. Do you want to suggest that we go with this? Does anybody have any very strong feelings at this point? Do you want to collect more data? We're going to have to make these decisions pretty quickly since this is July budget. We really need to make it today, don't we?
Since Scott has access to checkout times, I think it would make me feel more comfortable. I can't speak for everybody else, to know, like you were saying, where are the trends? Most of the checkouts between these hours and this hours, because we would be following the demographic.
Yeah, and I've got to say though, the one comment I have on that is checkout's not going to tell us the whole story, because it may be that the people who come in early in the mornings are the retirees who are at home running out to get their books, versus the kids coming in after school may not take out a lot of books, but maybe they're using Wi-Fi and doing other stuff at 6:30 in the in the evening. So I'm going to suggest that we do get that information, but maybe we at least provisionally plan on these as the hours, say through the end of the summer without question.
I'm comfortable with that, Bill.
I'm comfortable with that as well. And I think the uniform starting time will help the citizens as well.
Okay. Do we need to do, well, I don't think we need to vote on that. I think we just, Scott, do you think we need to vote for any reason?
We can roll this out as part of the COVID response. And we can assess it. I can gather some more data in terms of I can have library staff look at their numbers. Running those hourly reports are not necessarily an easy thing to do. I can work on that too.
Yeah, and let's see what people say when they hear about it. Are people saying, oh, I'm really a nuisance, can't get in here in time? I mean, if we get a lot of feedback from the public in that respect, that would be nice to know.
Right. The key thing is it reflects what has happened to our budget. So it's a decrease of about 9% in our operating hours. So I've done it this way so that we can easily tell that story, and it reflects the dollars and the service. Sure. And so hopefully council has said they are going to monthly look at our budget, at the budget for the city, and make determinations about things they're going to put in or take out or make changes.
Sure.
I think
Scott,
this is,
sorry, go ahead.
So I think this is a way to advocate and also express how the cuts have impacted us.
Right.
And it can also, we can also say, look, we had to make you cut our budget 9%. So we had to make difficult decisions. We made the best decisions on the information that we had at hand and the flow of resources. And we unrolled things the way we've rolled them up. So we can also add things back in as those funds become available.
Yeah, and I think we need to keep in mind that depending upon how schools open up in late August or September, we may need to revisit some of these hours, specifically Broad Rock and the Sunday hours and some of those kind of things.
Right.
Scott, who was the council person or persons that I believe you spoke with them that pushed so hard to have Sunday hours in their district?
So that was former Councilor Agelasto.
Okay.
He pushed hard for the library to get Sunday hours. Unfortunately, he would say
there was a woman also involved. She wanted.
Pardon?
I thought there was also a woman, possibly Southside council person that had pushed for it as well, but my memory.
Reva?
Oh, Reva. Yeah, Reva Trammell definitely pushed for it in Broad Rock.
It might be worth putting a bug in her ear and say, hey, just giving you a heads up, due to budget cuts, you're losing those Sunday hours you lobbied for.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's not targeted at her or not targeted at anybody. I mean, these cuts, we have to kind of wear these cuts across the board.
Right.
And I felt like this kind of spread things out pretty evenly across the board, and also made it so that if the funding can return, we can start turning it back up.
Good. Okay. So I think we've got a consensus, and you're doing it under COVID, so we don't need to take a vote, but we'll roll with these hours through July and August at least.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Good here.
So we can carry on with that,
Okay.
that action.
Anything else I mean, the big thing on finance obviously was that dealing with the 550,000 budget decrease anticipated and not knowing whether that's even going to hold at that level. Anything else on finance that we want to cover? I'm trying to not keep everyone too long here.
I'm good.
Okay, how about we move to facilities and I guess, Scott, that's you, Emily, and Cheryl? Is that right?
And Janet.
Janet, I'm sorry, Janet, yes.
So I shared with Janet that a draft and a final copy of the RFP was produced by procurement and legal, and they have posted that today.
Ah, good.
So that will go out to bid today. We have a pre-bid meeting on the 7th of July. That's optional. And then come August 4th, that's when the architects will be responsible for presenting their proposals. So
okay. Excellent.
It's a fairly extensive document. You can look at it online, or I can send you a copy of it, all of you a copy of it if you wish.
Scott, could you just send out the link to it maybe?
Okay, be happy to.
That'd probably be an easy way.
Yep. So, and then we've just had, maintenance issues this summer while we've been closed, and done a lot of repairs. So hopefully our buildings will be in a lot better preventative maintenance shape when we open back up. I didn't mean to cut you off, Janet, sorry.
I just wondered about the deficiencies from the earlier versions.
Mm-hmm.
So you're comfortable that those deficiencies have been resolved?
Yeah, I don't think they left any rocks unturned on this this shot at it. It has grown from like 30 pages to 50 pages.
Ooh.
So.
Sure. I'd like to quickly thank Laura for having
for sure
turn the heat up a little bit on people to get that finally moved out. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you for saying that. You're welcome.
Thank you, Laura.
Okay, let's move on. David, governance.
Well, as you all know, everyone is in attendance at our special meeting last week. I forwarded over our board's recommendations to boards and commissions, and council will vote on those later in July. Mm-hmm. So until then, Daisy, it looks like you and I are back to the virtual free lunches again.
That's it. Okay, and actually, David, I think you said
all I
that.
have to report this time.
Okay, I think, David, you said that the council subcommittee looks at them tomorrow, and then it'll go on to the council, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. We've discussed the unfinished business of the cell phone charges. Is there any new business that we haven't talked about? I don't have anything. No. Okay.
Yeah.
If there's no new business, we're at 12:59, and we'll go ahead and adjourn. Next meeting is July 22nd. Anticipating that will still be an electronic meeting, or we may be able to start to go to a blended. That's right, Scott. I see your hands up there. Who knows? But maybe we can even go to a blended if some of us want to come in and socially space in the boardroom, or move down to Gelman where there's more space or something like that. But in the meantime, thank you everyone for all of your continued work and support, and hope that you have a fantastic beginning of July and enjoy the long holiday weekend there. They look a lot like the regular weekends with social distancing, but.
Bill, at the very least, I'm disappointed that you didn't use the beach for your backdrop there, buddy. I mean, it would have been nice scenery.
My wife moved me out of a room so that I wasn't doing that, David.
Everybody stay safe.
Take care. We're adjourned.